So, picture this. It's late 1520, and the simmering feud between a lone German monk and, well, the most powerful institution on the planet is about to just explode. We're past debating theology at this point. Now, it's all about defiance. It's about rebellion, and it's about one single act that is going to change the world forever. Let's get right into Martin Luther's point of no return. Wow, I mean, those are the words of a man who has slammed the door shut. There are no more negotiations, there's no more backing down. Martin Luther has just been officially condemned by the Pope, but instead of going quiet, he chooses to go to war. For him, the die is cast. There's no turning back. So the church has passed its judgment. What do you do? Where can you possibly turn? Well, Luther absolutely refused to be silenced, so he took his fight to a brand new authority, hoping against hope that this one might actually listen.
He goes big. He appeals directly to the brand new Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. But what's so fascinating is what he asks for. He doesn't say, hey, protect me, defend me. No, he simply asks that his ideas, whether they're true or false, not be condemned without a fair hearing. He's betting everything on the power of his arguments if he can just get someone to listen.
Now, while he's waiting to hear back from the emperor, Luther doesn't just sit on his hands. He goes on the offensive. He writes and publishes this absolutely explosive pamphlet, the Address to the German Nobility. And his goal here is simple: to tear down the very walls the church uses to shield its power. Luther basically said the church has built these three massive, impenetrable walls around itself to stop anyone from reforming it. Wall number one, the idea that church power is always above state power. Wall number two, that only the Pope gets to say what the Bible really means. And wall number three, only the Pope can call a big meeting to fix problems. Luther, well, he planned on taking a sledgehammer to all of them. Okay, so to smash that first wall, Luther drops a bombshell of an idea: the priesthood of all believers. He argues that if you're baptized, you're a priest. Period. That puts everyone, popes, kings, peasants, on the same spiritual level. And if that's true, then the state, which was created by God, has every right to punish a criminal, even if that criminal happens to wear a priest's collar. Next up, he goes after the idea that only the Pope can interpret the Bible. Luther says, no way. Any true Christian, he argues, can read and understand God's word for themselves. And he even gets a little cheeky here, making a reference to the Old Testament, pointing out that if God could speak truth through a donkey, why couldn't he speak truth through a regular person against a corrupt Pope? And he brings down that third wall with the same kind of logic. He says, look, if the church is on fire and the Pope refuses to put it out, then it's the duty of other Christians, especially secular rulers, to call a council and get things back on track. He's basically handing the German nobles an invitation to reform the church themselves. And to really hammer his point home, Luther uses this just devastating comparison. This contrast, it gets right to the heart of his critique. You have Christ, who washed his disciples' feet and walked everywhere, and then you have the Pope, who has his feet kissed by kings and is carried around in luxury. You can imagine how that comparison landed with ordinary people. It was powerful stuff. Of course, you can't just attack the very foundations of the papacy and expect Rome to just let it slide. A response was coming, and you can be sure it was going to be swift and severe. And here it is. The Pope issues Exsurge Domine, which means arise, O Lord. This is a papal bull, and you got to understand, this is the nuclear option for the church. It officially condemns 41 of Luther's ideas and gives him a crystal clear ultimatum. You have 60 days to take it all back, or you are excommunicated, kicked out of the church forever. Two guys are sent to Germany to make sure this bull is enforced. You've got Jerome Alliandara, a smooth, polished diplomat. His job is to handle the emperor and the elites. And then there's John Eck, Luther's old debate rival. He's supposed to deal with the bishops and universities. But Eck makes this huge unforced error. He secretly adds the names of other popular reformers to the bull, which immediately makes a lot of people angry and suspicious. But when Eck and Aleander get to Germany, they don't exactly get a warm welcome. They weren't met with submission. Instead, they ran headfirst into a wall of popular resistance, and a lot of the time, it got violent. I mean, the resistance was immediate, and it was personal. In the city of Leipzig, the mood got so ugly that John Eck, the Pope's official messenger, literally had to go into hiding at a monastery because he was afraid for his life. Over in Erfurt, the university students just turned the whole thing into a joke. They started calling the papal bull a balloon, like a bubble, just full of hot air. And then they gathered up all the copies they could find and just chucked them into the river. And maybe the most amazing story comes out of Mainz. They're all set to burn Luther's books, but the town executioner turns to the massive crowd and asks them, "Are these books legally condemned?" And the whole crowd just roars back, "No!" So the executioner just drops his torch and walks away. The authorities were completely losing their grip. So the 60-day deadline on the papal bull is ticking down, public support for him is surging. Luther knows he needs to make one final, unmistakable statement. He decides he's going to fight fire with fire. What is so fascinating about this moment is how Luther plays it. He has these two completely different voices. In a letter he sends to Pope Leo the Man, he's incredibly respectful, almost gentle. He paints the Pope as this good guy, like Daniel trapped in a den of corrupt lions in Rome. But when he writes about the bull itself, oh, he is absolutely savage. He calls it blasphemy, the work of the Antichrist, and then he says, "This is my recantation." What a line. So the bull officially reaches Luther's town on October 10th. The clock starts ticking, 60 days. That brings us to December 10th. The time was up. All of Germany is holding its breath. What is Martin Luther going to do? His reasoning was simple, direct, and, well, brutal. It's an eye for an eye. They burned his books, which he believed contained God's truth, so now he would burn their books, which he believed had corrupted that truth. So on that day, December 10th, 1520, Martin Luther walks out to the Elster Gate in his town of Wittenberg, and in front of professors and students, he doesn't just burn the papal bull, he also throws the entire collection of canon law. We're talking centuries of church law, the very legal foundation of papal power. He throws it all onto the bonfire. This wasn't just defiance. This was a declaration of total rebellion. And here's why this moment is so critical. This act forced everybody to pick a side. Luther's powerful protector, Frederick the Wise, could no longer play games and pretend he was just asking for a fair debate for his professor. Now he had to defend a man who had publicly burned a decree from the Pope. The split wasn't just a theory anymore, it was real and it was happening. You see, it was so much more than just a bonfire. It was a signal to the entire world that compromise was over. And that leaves us with this massive, critical question. By burning a single piece of paper, did Martin Luther light a fire that would end up consuming all of Europe for centuries to come?